You remember and celebrate violence in this very museum. You say to your fellows and to your children, let us learn and consecrate this violence. But for the Negro and his emancipation, you say, no, only peaceful means. Violence is only justified in times of war. We are talking of a time of war. When the Negro slave takes up arms to fight for his rights, his humanity, even his very life, against an institution, and another body takes up arms to deny him this, he is at war. Vengeance belongs to God. For his vengeance I would slay, not for my own. This guy was of a different ilk. He was somebody that we don't see too many of today. He was considered insane because who would believe that a black person was equal to a white?
I always learned that John Brown was crazy. He was like a side story in history textbooks.
Don't say John Brown was crazy and that's the end of it. Or, and don't say he was a fanatic and therefore we shouldn't consider, what he did. Just take John Brown seriously.
He had his convictions. He believed strongly in them. He knew the meaning of sacrifice.
Coming to grips with this guy is a big responsibility for us, especially when you consider that if I have a problem with what John Brown did, in some strange way, I'm saying that I might have a problem with what our founding fathers did.
The time trial series is our way of getting people thinking about how they know what they know about history. So we present a controversial figure in American history. We did Benedict Arnold for the first one, now John Brown. We will have people thinking about what it means to fight against slavery, why the Civil War started in the first place, what John Brown's role was in starting the Civil War, and how the idea of John Brown's legacy has changed over time.
The way I got introduced to even the name of John Brown is my mother used it as a substitute for curse words because she didn't curse. So instead of saying, will you go pick up your blank blank clothes, she'd say, go pick up your John Brown clothes. And for me, that was what John Brown was. Later on, when I learned that he was an actual person, where this expression came from, I said, I wonder what this guy did.
John Brown was an abolitionist who, unlike many abolitionists, decided to use violence. This would be in the late 1850s. He began to realize that violence was the only way to respond to the legislation that was allowing more slavery, not less slavery, in the United States at that time.
I now realize I had barely scratched the surface on who this guy was. This guy was so central to just about every major occurrence, every major figure during the Civil War. And so once I figured that out, I said, okay, I think we have something here with this character. This could be something really, really good for our visitors to come in and see and talk about.
The best instances are when somebody in the front row hears something in the back row and they have to turn and they're literally trying to convey their idea to somebody they disagree with in the back. And there's been some very, very interesting back and forth, and that's the point, to get the audience so thinking through this process, having heard some of the things that I brought about, and then in their own lives to take it personally as to what they would do, and has history been right with regard to this man.
People will say lots of things. People come in with a lot of different background information. Some people know a lot about John Brown. We're expecting some people don't even know who he is. Part of the role of the arbiter is to put everybody on the same level. So they're going to give enough information that everyone can have a discussion about John Brown and then move from there.
I'm going to be supporting the program as an arbiter, which means that obviously Terry is going to be playing the part of John Brown, and it's going to be difficult at times for the audience to really know how to interact with him. So the arbiter's role is to sort of help negotiate that.
When John Brown gets questions, that it's helpful to have some more info maybe than he has. Then I'm there.
We can help interpret their questions and redirect them in ways that John Brown will be able to answer, and just also help guide the discussion during the time trial.
What we really want Pete to do is get people thinking and get them talking.
We're not necessarily trying to change people's minds as much as introduce that there are different viewpoints that are equally valid to the one you may hold.
We are not suggesting that everyone turn to violence, or anyone. We're not suggesting that anyone turn to violence. And in fact, that's something we've had to really wrestle with. We don't want to make John Brown out to be a hero at all, but he is a really contested figure, and we think that people should know more about him because history is complicated, and you can't ignore the complications of history.
I think that some of our biggest successes come from the questions that we don't necessarily answer. To hear an audience member after they leave a time trial program say, wow, that was really neat. I can't wait to go home and learn more about John Brown on my own. I think that could be the most rewarding aspect of this program. And beyond that, just to realize that there is a huge difference at times between historical fact and the way that those events are remembered. Acknowledging and respecting that discrepancy is, I think, really key to really having a firm understanding of our nation's history.
I pity the poor in bondage that have none to help them. A slave owner may capture, kill a Negro, slave or free, without reason or due process and legally. This is the government to which you entrust the power of violence.